Bashar al-Assad, a controversial leader in modern Syria. Bashar al-Assad. To some, he is a symbol of stability and resistance. To others, a ruthless dictator. His life story is as complex and controversial as the nation he governs. This is the life of Bashar al-Assad, a man whose name has become synonymous with modern Syria. Bashar Hafez al-Assad was born on September 11, 1965, in Damascus, Syria, into one of the country's most powerful families. His father, Hafez al-Assad, served as Syria's president for 30 years, consolidating power through a blend of strategic alliances and authoritarian control. Unlike his father, Bashar's early life did not revolve around politics. Reserved and studious, Bashar showed little interest in following his father's footsteps. Instead, he pursued medicine, attending Damascus University to study ophthalmology. It was in London that Bashar experienced life away from Syria's political sphere. By all accounts, he was soft-spoken and unassuming, far removed from the image of a future leader. But everything changed in 1994. Bashar's older brother Basil was the family's chosen heir, groomed for leadership from a young age. But his untimely death in a car crash thrust Bashar into a role he had never sought. With little preparation, Bashar was recalled to Syria and began intensive military and political training. He enrolled in the Homs Military Academy, rising through the ranks to establish his credibility. By the late 1990s, it was clear Bashar was being prepared to succeed his father. In June 2000, Hafez al-Assad passed away. Just weeks later, Bashar was elected president in a referendum with a reported 97% of the vote. At 34 years old, he became one of the world's youngest heads of state. Initially, Bashar's presidency was met with cautious optimism. Many hoped that his Western education and relative youth would bring modernization and reform to Syria. In his early years, he promised to combat corruption and liberalize the economy. Small changes were made: the introduction of private banks, increased internet access, and limited political dialogue. But these reforms were short-lived. The so-called Damascus Spring was quickly shut down, and dissenting voices were silenced. Over time, Bashar solidified his grip on power. His regime maintained control through a vast security apparatus and alliances with influential groups, including Syria's Alawite minority, to which the Assad family belongs. On the international stage, Bashar positioned Syria as a key player in Middle Eastern geopolitics. He maintained alliances with Iran and Hezbollah while navigating a tense relationship with the West. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Economic struggles, allegations of human rights abuses, and widespread dissatisfaction were brewing, setting the stage for one of the most tumultuous periods in Syrian history. In 2011, the Arab Spring swept across the Middle East, toppling regimes and igniting calls for democracy. In Syria, peaceful protests against government corruption and repression were met with violence. What began as a series of demonstrations quickly escalated into a full-scale civil war. Bashar's government was accused of using brutal tactics to suppress opposition, including bombings, mass arrests, and alleged chemical weapon attacks. The conflict divided the nation. Rebel groups, Islamist factions, and Kurdish forces vied for control, while millions of civilians were caught in the crossfire. By 2023, the war had claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and displaced over 12 million people. Despite international condemnation, Bashar remained defiant, framing himself as a defender of Syrian sovereignty against foreign-backed terrorism. Bashar al-Assad's actions during the war sparked global outrage. The United Nations accused his regime of war crimes, while Western nations imposed crippling sanctions. However, Bashar found steadfast allies in Russia and Iran. Russian airstrikes and Iranian militias played a crucial role in turning the tide of the war in his favor. By 2018, the Syrian government had regained control of most of the country, though at an enormous human and economic cost. Today, Bashar al-Assad's legacy remains deeply polarizing. To his supporters, he is a protector of Syria, a leader who stood firm in the face of foreign intervention and terrorism. To his detractors, he is a dictator responsible for immense suffering and a devastated nation. Despite international isolation, Bashar remains in power, a testament to the resilience of his regime and the fractured state of global diplomacy. Bashar al-Assad's life and leadership embody the complexities of modern Syria, a nation at the crossroads of history, torn between hope and despair, progress and devastation. Whether history will remember him as a stabilizer or a tyrant remains to be seen. The story of Syria continues.